Hello, everyone, and welcome to the X Button Podcast. This is episode 23.5 of season 5. That is because we are doing a half episode this week, a specific topic we're going to be discussing, and we'll talk about that momentarily. We are going for this half episode so that we can align our full episode of 200 to be when the whole crew can be together, which will be in a couple weeks here, right around the 4th of July holiday. So rather than leave you high and dry for the week, Rick and I decided to step up to the plate and do a little half episode, a shorter one for you. So we're not going to be talking about news. We'll be focusing on a regular topic that we've selected, and we'll talk about the games as well, just for for the record, so everyone's got that. So thank you all for joining us. This is the X Button Podcast, half an episode. Xscape Gaming's podcast that posts every Friday from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel, Xscape Gaming. This episode will not be available on the audio services. This is a YouTube exclusive for you guys to keep Al the Evil Go Rhythm available and happy so that we can keep the channel afloat. And that's all I have to say for the intro this time. So you know what? This topic is actually one that our very own Rick Davis has come up with, and that topic is GameStop. Who'da thunk, right? That Rick and I are going to talk GameStop. I think this is kind of a little bit of a venting episode and a little bit of a memories episode. So I'm going to throw this just straight over to Rick to get started on the topic here, because he's the one who's worked for GameStop. He's really thought about it and has a lot to say. So Rick, hello, how are you, sir? Tell me your thoughts on GameStop. But first, how are you doing?
I'm doing. Things are finally starting to settle down after a couple crazy weeks, but it's still been busy trying to get things done before. Got a trip coming up next, not this coming weekend, but next weekend. So I'm trying to make sure everything's taken care of. So
Exciting.
a little bit, yeah. But that's about it. How about you? How you doing?
Doing all right. Doing okay. It's this is in America a holiday which is the stupidest holiday name in the world. It's called Juneteenth. Um, I think that's a really dumb name. I think that if you're really going to celebrate the abolition of slavery, you should call it like Slavery Abolition Day or something that honors what actually it's about instead of a name like Juneteenth. But that's what we've decided to go with as a society. So today's Juneteenth, and I had the day off, so I just did some shopping and basic household chore things because it's not often I have a random Thursday off in the middle of the week. So I'm doing all right otherwise. I'm going to a casino this weekend, so that'll be really fun. And I didn't know I was going to a casino until about an hour ago, so now I'm really like extra excited. So that'll be cool. You a gambler, Rick? Do you gamble at all?
I do not.
Huh.
Not. I mean, I do like just little things on Twitch, but not with money or anything
Sure.
like that. It's using like the channel points and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
no serious gambling.
Gotcha.
I figure I have enough vices. That's probably one I don't need to add to the
That's true.
repertoire.
All of your collectibles pretty much adds up probably to less money than I've ever lost in gambling in my 10 years of gambling or 11 years of
Mm.
gambling or so or more, because casinos on cruise ships let you gamble at 18 instead of 21, which is where I learned how to gamble.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
international law when you're on a cruise ship, I believe.
Yeah, it is. Interestingly, the alcohol laws are of the port with which from which you depart. So if you depart
Mm.
from a US port, you still have to be 21 to
Mm.
drink, but you can gamble at 18 in international waters. So I've been gambling since I was like 18 or 19 on cruise ships. Like gambling. I'm a craps player and a blackjack player. So yeah, Jing has a conference this weekend, and she's not going to drive as far as she needs to go to the conference. So I'm going with her, and I'm not going
Mm.
to go to the conference. I'm going to go to the casino and chill. It was her idea, actually. She's great. So
Mm.
yeah, Rick, GameStop. Let's talk GameStop here.
Yeah,
What do you want to say?
well, there's a lot to say about GameStop. As most people will know, they're pretty much one of the banes of the industry nowadays. And that title is rightly deserved. So I figured we could cover a myriad of aspects about the company, uh, both positive and negative, because there's not nearly as much positive as there's negative to speak about them. Uh,
Anymore.
well, for a long time there hasn't been a whole lot positive, but
There.
uh, I I thought about it since it was the two of us. We both went through through various elements of hell when it came to our Assassin's Creed Shadow Collector's Edition. I
Oh
would
yeah.
argue that even though mine was done quicker, that I went through more hell because you at least got the correct product. I didn't even get that correctly, and
That's
technically,
true.
I never did actually get the correct product. I did in ways, but um, yeah. So,
Ugh.
as you mentioned, I worked there. I worked there from 2005 until 2010, which kind of was truly the beginning of their descent into pretty much being hated by the entire like industry. Um, I I would say they weren't quite as hated by the time I was finished there as they got not very long after. Obviously, they're just as a quick overview for people that somehow might not know this. They're pretty well hated because number one, their main thing obviously has always been their pre-owned market,
Mm-hmm.
their trade-ins and all that stuff. And so it works well, especially for kids who don't have money or don't have jobs and stuff like that. They can trade in stuff. But the problem is they are absolute scam like con artists when it comes to it because they'll give you using numbers when I worked there, right? So we didn't have $70 games at that point; it was 60. Uh, you know,
Was it 60 or was it 50 at that point?
no, it was 60 then.
Was it? Okay.
That's when the 360 and PS3 were out.
Right,
Uh,
yeah, cool. Well, yeah, because 360 launched in '05, and that's right when you started, yeah. So that makes sense.
360 was basically the one that started the $60 games.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously PS3 followed suit. Um, so when a game had just come out and it was still $60 or whatever, right? If someone bought it and a week later goes, you know what, I can't stand this, I'm gonna trade it in. They'll turn around and sell it for 55, which frankly I could never understand why anybody would buy a used game for
Me
$5
either.
less. I understand when it's a good bit less, but when it's $5 less, I don't like, just pay the $5 to get a new game. But the also problem is there, and now don't get me wrong, people have this weird mentality where they think if GameStop's selling for 55 that they should get 55 for it, and that's just insanity. Like that's
Yeah.
not how business works. However, GameStop would give at most like 25 bucks. So they were making
Yeah.
like a 100% plus markup on in most of these cases.
Mm-hmm.
Um and that is kind of that and really the pushing of all the nonsense is what truly began kind of their downward spiral of their reputation.
Yeah.
Certainly, uh, pushing pre-ins, I never, or not pre-ins, sorry, pre-orders was never that big of a deal. There is some weird anti-pre-order campaign that's going on across the industry right now that I don't quite understand, but but pushing Game Informer subscriptions because at that time they were owned by GameStop, which unfortunately also made them not a particularly reputable source. You know, when you're owned by a company trying to sell games, you can't really trust your reviews. But they were a good magazine though, nevertheless. Um, and so at that time, right, that's when things started to really kind of get pushy. And I can say, as somebody that worked there and over in XEP and stuff like that, I talked to Luke and Kevin and all those other guys who did work there, and pretty much every one of us had the same uh, perspective on things. And I can honestly say, and this is not hyperbole, it's probably the worst job I've ever had. And if you were to look, if you go on Reddit, there actually is a GameStop subreddit, which is largely handled by employees or ex-employees and all that stuff, pretty much talking about their experiences working there. By the way, you are muted if you're saying anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, I
that's
was
all
gonna
right.
say, is it like, I picture the Reddit as like one of those recovering religion people Reddits where it's like, former people from different religious sects that are like, oh, I'm not a practicing person, I'm a recovering person, like that sort of
That
thing. I'm a
that's
recovering GameStop employee. Like
that
that's how it comes
that
across to me.
that's not a bad way to put it. But also, to be fair, some of them are people that will be like customers and be like, "Why on earth is this what happened?" And sometimes people will
Okay.
answer it. Um, Like I actually, there's a guy from XEP who I always forget works for GameStop, but named Anubis, and I've actually seen him replying to stuff in there and kind of explaining
Yeah.
either why something happens, or in a lot of cases, actually, this started showing up in my feed because I started doing some research when this Assassin's Creed Shadows debacle happened,
Mm.
and that was where I kind of rambled about how bad it was there, but um, everything I have seen is that as bad as it was then, it is way worse now.
Hmm.
Um, because whoever the CEO is that runs it, and he took over, I don't know,
Yeah, it's Ryan.
4 or 5 years ago, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's his name is Ryan Cohen is his name.
yes, that sounds right.
It is.
This
I have
guy.
the page pulled up, so we have
Okay.
accurate information.
From what I have gathered, this man has no business being in charge of any company, because he is just absolute dog shit on a stick. And they've always treated their employees like pretty much garbage. I always said if you were anything under a store manager level, and that includes assistant manager, you were pretty much not even on their radar as a human being. And apparently now it's to the point that even anything at that level, like store manager, you're still nothing.
Hmm.
They've pretty much taken all the power out of managers' abilities or out of managers' hands to make decisions and stuff
All
like
right, so
that.
let's stop there for a sec, Rich.
Sure,
So let me
sure.
ask
Yeah,
you,
what's up?
what sort of power did managers have in GameStop back in the day? Because you said they took the power away. So what sort of
When I
authority
was
did they
there?
have? Yeah, when you were there. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, okay, so the price of product, the value of product on trade-in, stuff like that, that was all completely handled by
Of
corporate.
course, yeah.
Right. Everything else, though, the store manager really did have pretty much
Hmm.
autonomy. I guess it depends what district you were in. The district manager certainly could say, "Hey, I don't
Yeah,
want it run like this." But
right,
for the
of
most
course.
part, so I was under a couple different store managers because stores closing, managers moving, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I can say it actually was like working for two different companies at certain points because they just ran it so
Wow.
differently.
Interesting.
Obviously, what you do on a minute-to-minute basis is the same, but the processes by which the managers would
Yeah.
lead and stuff like that was very different.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, obviously, your location made a big difference, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no, as much as GameStop seems to believe that every store can be equal, that's just absolutely not true because it just depends
Mm-hmm.
where you are. However, there is no question that proper leadership made a difference because you saw happier employees, and happier customers, which resulted in better sales, right?
Proper leadership at the manager level.
At store manager level, correct?
Okay.
They use a different title now, but it's effectively the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um, and my one manager that I had for a long time, Mark was his name, or is his name
Mm-hmm.
still alive? I think he is still a manager. Actually, at one of the
Oh, wow.
was a little ways away. He was at Electronics Boutique. If you remember, Electronics Boutique was a separate company that
I had never had any experience with Electronics Boutique. I remember hearing about it, but my whole life of experience with game stores really was GameStop or Toys R Us or Best Buy or something like that.
I am sorry to hear that because so going way back here, Electronics Boutique was pretty much GameStop's primary competitor in that market.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Walmart and all them were really
Yeah.
what the competitors were, but the reality is GameStop was no competitor to them in any way.
Yeah.
Um, but in the I think they counted it as the specialty market. You had Electronics Boutique and you had GameStop started as, like, I guess it was GameStop, but it also they ended up acquiring
Yeah, so GameStop, let me start here.
Funcom. Okay.
Let me start there. So GameStop's history started as Babbage's from 1980
Yeah.
until
Okay.
1994 in Texas. And then
But
Babbage's merged with Software Etc. in
no,
94.
that's it. I forgot Software, etc. Yeah, Babbage's was the original company. I did forget about
Yes.
that.
Yep, and then Babbage's became Babbage's Etc. After NeoStar had merged them together, which was then bought out in '99 by Barnes and Noble. Actually, they bought out Babbage's Etc. And at that point, they went independent in 2004. Or they went public in 2002, and Barnes and Noble released control in 2004 when it spread its stake out in GameStop to other stakeholders.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, so it's been an independent company since 2004, basically 1 year since before you started.
Gotcha. Um,
Good,
yeah,
sorry.
and that's okay. And then at some point, uh, probably right around that same time period, don't remember exactly what it was, GameStop
Mm-hmm.
actually bought Electronics Boutique. And the truth is, this is where things really started to go
2005.
downhill. Okay, so it was the same year.
2005 they bought it. Yep.
So this is when things really started to go downhill, because the reality was, while they're not a monopoly by definition, as they obviously have competition in Best Buy and Walmart and all that,
Mm-hmm.
they really were a monopoly in the specialty gaming space. Which I mean, they're not the only one.
Yeah.
I think whatever the one in Game Center or whatever it was in Europe is the same thing. They were basically the only one there, and so
Hmm.
it became a major problem. And the reality was, now you had zero competition when it came to trade values and used
Yeah.
game prices. Um,
Yeah, so to pick up from there on acquisitions, so in 2005, GameStop acquired EB Games. 2007, they purchased Rhino Video Games, which was a southeastern U.S. operator. It had 70 stores, so it's a healthy number of stores. And then from 2008 through 2000, basically 12, they kind of just bought up everything, and then they had a couple of pickups later on, 2013, 2015, 2016. But
they
yeah,
became the Xbox of gaming retailers. Yes,
they absolutely did. You are correct. That is a
yes.
perfect comparison to what they have done here. Yeah, so they bought up Free Shop Record in Norway. They bought up Micromania in France. They bought Jolt Online. Uh, Congregate they bought in 2010. Spawn Labs and Impulse were purchased in 2011. Impulse is what the brand that they used when they tried to go into their digital distribution of games. You remember when they had like the GameStop app and they were
Mm,
selling games digitally?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
yes.
all year that lasted. Yeah, and
Yeah.
actually, I don't know if they still do, but you mentioned about Barnes and Noble. For a while, GameStop did own Barnes and Noble, and I believe they still probably do. Or
Uh,
at least they were sister companies or something like that.
Barnes and Noble owned Babbage's, and then they basically spun it off out separately into an IPO, and they were a majority stakeholder, and then they let it go. So as of this moment, I'm looking at Barnes and Nobles right now. They're owned by Elliott Investment Management, so they are not owned by the
Oh,
same
okay.
company, but they were in the early 2000s is when that
They,
was.
they certainly had like a cooperating relationship because as an
Yeah.
employee, actually, we got discounts
Hmm.
like the same discount we got, which was not anything worth writing home about. But we got the same discount if we went to Barnes and Noble, and Barnes and Noble employees would get the same discount for us
Yeah.
as well.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, they probably
uh,
had some sort of agreement like that. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, this is pretty much when things really started to become an issue. It just obviously doesn't happen right away. It takes a little bit of a while to spin up.
Yeah.
But basically, GameStop had free reign now to do whatever they wanted to do in the market, and it became an issue. Um,
Yeah.
and so now, what I'm seeing when I'm looking at these Reddit posts about from current employees or people who, as they term it, uh, they have promoted to customer, as in they consider it a promotion to get fired or leave because they want to get the hell out of there so bad.
That's funny
Um,
because they don't treat their customers that great either.
no, exactly. Well, that's what I discovered reading all this was like because people would say like, well, why can't the story? This was dealing with the Assassin's Creed Shadows thing, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot. What your case happened was a little bit more unique. What happened with me was pretty common, which was for some reason one of these distribution centers was so stupid. The idiots who pulled it and packaged
Yeah.
it shipped the Xbox version instead of the PS5 version. And
Yep.
I think you could probably safely guess which version sold more, and it probably wasn't the Xbox version, right? So people were
Yeah.
saying like, well, what do we do? I don't want to keep waiting for this. I wanted this damn game, blah blah, blah 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 blah, right?
Hmm.
And so people were saying like, well, if stores have these, why don't they just take this return? I understand it's going to make it wrong, but you're not losing dollar value. You're shrinking out the Xbox version and excuse me, other way around. You're shrinking out the PlayStation version, but shrinking in the Xbox version, and it's a dollar to dollar, penny to penny, even exchange. And
Yeah.
people are like, because loss prevention, it doesn't matter that it's the dollar value. Their loss prevention is so insane now that they would look at that and they'd immediately be up someone's ass and probably start firing people, right?
Hmm.
And I'm seeing where like they basically have taken out the ability. And this is just an example of it, but I've seen other cases. They have taken out the option of customer service from the manager's hands because they want to run everything by the book from corporate office now. And it's like
Yeah.
when it comes to retail, I cannot think of a worse way to try to run a company because that's not how you do it.
Yeah. And the problem with that approach, Rick, is brings us to my experience with them, which was and your experience as well when it came to the Assassin's Creed originally was calling them, trying to get in touch with
Mm-hmm.
somebody who could do anything. I
Mm-hmm.
called them and all I would get was it would pretend as though I had gotten through and was waiting for a callback or something,
Mm-hmm.
but I never actually
Same.
requested a callback. Like nothing ever happened. And then finally, eventually, I was able to request the callback, and then they would call me back like 2 days later. because there is no customer service in the store, like you
Right.
said. It's all corporate and it's all in India, and
Hmm.
it's probably like 7 people in the entire country of India doing it based on
Hmm.
the sheer influx of calls they had to be receiving to just
Hmm.
not have it, available for someone calling with a problem for days. I mean, days, literal days that we were
Well,
we were
and,
waiting for a callback.
and actually, what you just described is far better than what I dealt with. What I dealt with, so it was day one. I was like, oh god damn it. I called. I waited on, I waited on hold for a while. Eventually, I was like,
Hmm.
all right, they're obviously getting killed. So I did accept the callback thing, right? And hours are going by, and I'm not getting a callback. I'm like, what the hell? It was something like 9:30. I finally got a call that was clearly from GameStop. I answered it. I've been ready to blow up because I had to wait this long. It was an automated message saying, "Sorry, we're too busy to return your call. Try again another day."
I got one of those too.
I was
Yep.
like, I was like, I was ready to go insane. So I sent an email because I'm like, all right, I'll probably get a faster response from email. I did not.
Nope, that took
I,
days
I,
when I emailed
yeah,
them.
oh yeah, yeah. It took a week for me. At
Yeah.
this point, I'd given up, which is why I said, fine, I'll give away this Xbox copy on our
Yeah.
spreading the nerd, and I'll just buy a PlayStation copy or whatever. Like I bought a digital copy because I'm like, I'm not waiting anymore. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And a week later, I finally got a call back. And now, credit to the girl who called me. She was very nice. Definitely, as you mentioned, Indian. But I will say, she she spoke very, very good English. So I can't
Oh, sure.
criticize.
It's not a question about their English. It's just about there not being enough people.
Oh,
There's
I
just
agree with
not
that. I
enough
agree with that.
people.
Like it is clear that everything here is money saving from corporate. And you know how you can save
Absolutely.
that? Pay your CEO what he's worth, which in this case is nothing. Don't pay him. Like and I will say again, as an employee, I saw this. Corporate office was off every other day. It seemed like. Meanwhile, you were open every day, but Christmas or Thanksgiving. And it's to the point now they're opening on Christmas
Yeah.
and they're opening on Thanksgiving. And like it's insane, right? And so I just kind of wanted to but I do want to emphasize, I am not criticizing in most cases, at least, the employees in the store because the reality is,
Yeah.
that, like, be nice to them because their job sucks. I can tell you
Yeah.
right now, their job sucks.
Yeah.
If they're an asshole to you, then yeah, don't be nice to them. They don't deserve it then. But like, don't give them shit because they're like they don't want to ask for those stupid ass pre-orders any more than you want them to. That company lives and dies at this point based on those stupid ass numbers, as if they mean a damn thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
again on this Reddit post, I have seen so many people saying like, because I had good numbers last year and I can't match them, they're firing me, and I've seen this all over. So I mean, obviously people can make shit up, but the fact that it seems to be posted about a lot, I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's the case. So
I
basically,
believe it.
on the employment side, I can say I cannot think of a company I would suggest. And obviously on paper you go, well, you're selling video games, this has to be fun. Take it from me. That company bleeds enjoyment of video games out of you. It truly and honestly does. Because instead of saying, hey, let's make, you sell entertainment, let's make this fun, they take fun out of it. And instead, they want to cater to the garbage customers
Yeah.
who want to come in and buy the $1 games, as if that means anything, right?
Right.
And so I guess this kind of transitions to something else I wanted to kind of talk about, which is
Yeah.
essentially, and you can certainly chime in on this one because this has nothing to do with being an employee, but how GameStop have essentially dug their own grave over the years, and I don't even mean treating customers like shit because that's certainly part of it, right? But how anybody with half of a brain could understand that their business model was eventually going to dry up, right? I am not a digital fan at all, but it was clearly the
Hmm.
way it was going. And so, what was the obvious direction GameStop had to go? Collectibles,
Uh,
which they did do, although they focused so much on the stupid ass Funko Pops.
yeah. I
But
don't know what they. Yeah.
but the other one was obviously they needed to start becoming a retro game store, and they tried that. However, if you're buying retro, more often than not, right? It's probably somebody who wants complete in box. They want shit in good condition.
Hmm.
GameStop's entire MO is we'll take it no matter what it looks like, no matter what condition it's in, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it all sells for the same value, which is to say the highest possible value, right? They're not pricing at the lowest, they're pricing at the highest,
Hmm.
and trades it at the same value. So if you trade in your game that you have taken exquisite care of and it's in perfect condition, complete in box, you get the same as some kid that just took the damn thing out of his diaper,
Yeah.
right?
It's
It's insanity. It's pure insanity how they have decided that was the way to do this.
Yeah, it's really funny because I remember a time when the generations would shift and GameStop was like, okay, we don't accept those old games anymore because no one's
Mhm.
buying them. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, for me, I never really sold games to GameStop. I was never a big trade-in person. I have a huge collection of all the games. I think the most games I ever gave away was one time I gave some bad PS1 games that I didn't like to my orthodontist's office for kids to use there. It was like Nobody Can Stop Mr. Domino and some stupid PS1 games like that. But yeah, so I never really cared about that, but I just found it interesting that they were stopping taking them in. I was like, okay, I mean, I guess it makes sense because no one's buying those games anymore. Now, it's funny in hindsight because of how big retro game collecting has become. And I don't care about retro game collecting, honestly. Like, I have the games that I own. I'm really not looking to go and buy old games anywhere. I can't really think of any game that I would want to spend the money on to get a retro game, but I know there's a lot of people that do. And so it really was a lack
It's
of
probably the
foresight.
biggest it's ever been right now, actually.
Yeah, and it was really a lack of foresight on GameStop's behalf
Absolutely.
to not see that. But I mean, in that regard, I almost can't blame them because I would never have seen it coming either. Like the games that I have because I just don't get rid of them, not because I was saving them because I thought they'd be worth something someday or anything like that, you know?
It's not. I mean, I do blame them because it's not a matter of you had to have seen it coming. You had to have seen that it was your only option for survival, though.
Yeah.
Like maybe you didn't see the resurgence of the retro market. I understand that,
Yeah, right. That's what
but
I'm
the
referring
reality
to.
is a proper leader of this company, which they have not had in a decade, if not more than that, would
Hmm.
have said, "This is a losing battle. We're not going to be able to rely on new games all the time. We have to start accumulating retro stuff." And the reality is, we need to start making sure that when it comes in, it is of a quality that people want to buy it.
Yeah.
And they just don't. Like, you technically still can go on their website and buy a couple PS1 games, N64 games, whatever. But as with what I just said, what do they all say when you go to buy them on there? I mean, you probably haven't looked, but
Pre-owned.
well, not that, because obviously they're pre-owned. You're not going to buy too much of that new. No, may include box, may include manual, but no
Oh, right.
guarantees, or however it phrases it. It's like that is bullshit. If I want to go on there and say, "Hey, I want this game, but I do not want it," if you don't have the box and manual, I should be able to say that, and you can't. All you can do
Yeah.
is buy it and hope it comes with it.
I mean, GameStop's website is trash already. Like it
It's
hardly
horrible. It's terrible.
functions.
It's terrible. Yeah.
The idea of being able to filter that granularly, like most places, like Amazon's filters aren't great either sometimes, but at least you generally have the ability to filter by company, by this, by that. Just adding like a complete in box filter would not be a crazy thing to ask for a game website that's
Or
trying to sell.
just even if it's not a filter, just a
Right.
box that says when whoever in the distribution center goes to pull it, if it's missing the box, if it's missing the manual, don't just back order it.
Yeah.
Yeah, how hard is that? How hard?
Yeah.
But they would rather take the risk of you just simply not buying it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I don't have too much more to say about that. I just kind of wanted to really get at that. Is like they truly have shot themselves in the foot over the years, and this all comes to bad management.
It does.
They hired the wrong people for decades.
Yeah.
When I worked there, I forget the guy's name. He actually ended up passing away. I want to say it was about 2 years after I retired. I really don't think he was a good CEO, but he was way better than the ones they've had ever since.
Yeah.
His name was like Don. It began with an M. I don't remember what his last name was.
Not Don Matrick.
No, it was not Don Matrick. I can tell you that.
So I want to talk a little bit about my experiences with GameStop right now, and a little bit on the employment front too, because working for GameStop was always a dream of mine when I was a kid. And I won't say
Sure.
when I was a kid because no kid wants to work, but when I was like a teenager or when I was in college. So I went to University of Central Florida in Orlando, or that was one of the only universities with a GameStop actually on its campus, Rick. Meaning, like, I didn't have to leave campus to go to the GameStop. Now, I started college after you had already left GameStop, so
Mm.
but when I was there, they had opened up. I think maybe a year earlier because I started in 2011 and I think they'd opened in like 2010 or something. And I was so excited when I toured that campus and I saw that there was a GameStop there. It was a huge selling point for why I wanted to go there. And I'm glad I did because I love Orlando. My condo is just outside of it. That's home for me at this point. I consider that region my home. And so I would go to that GameStop, Rick. I'm telling you, if there's 365 days in a year and I was in college for 3 years, I would have, that's 1,095 days. I would say that like 1,080 of them I went to that GameStop. Like every day I went there, even if I wasn't gonna buy anything, even if I wasn't gonna
Mhm.
do anything there. I just went there because it was so cool for me
Mhm.
as a nerdy gaming guy who really did not, does not to this day, and probably won't ever really have any real life friends who are into video games. It was nice to have somebody to talk to talk video games with, kind of like we do on the podcast here, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
that Mark that I mentioned, who's my first manager.
mhm.
This is not an exaggeration. I was friends. At that point, he had not played games too much anymore. He already did become the guy who GameStop or EB, whichever one it was at the time, I don't
Yeah.
remember, had bled any interest of gaming out of him. But also the assistant manager, his name is Lynn. I was friends with him. I would, if I had a day off or whatever. I don't even think I was employed at that point. I want to say I was going to school. Um, if I didn't have anything going on, I would just go down to the mall because that was a mall store.
Mhm.
I would hang out there for 3 or 4 hours and just bullshit with them the whole day.
Yeah, I did the same thing. It would be 3 or 4 hours because I had class and things usually, but I would go there, and I remember the store manager was Kevin, and I remember that two of the employees were Jordan and Aston, and there was one other employee. There was one female employee. I can't remember her name because I didn't talk to her too often at the time because she wasn't there, I guess, as often as the other guys were. Maybe she just had fewer hours or something. But I would hang out and just stand around and chat, and there were people that would come in with me. Like there were regular GameStop
Mm-hmm.
attendees who I
Oh
would
yeah.
just stand around and chit chat with. And I think that really would have been a good alternative path for GameStop to go down if they hadn't, because I think they thought about doing this, but they kind of
They
botched
they
it, was
they
turned
did,
it
but
into a social hub.
it was only in certain test markets. And you're
Yeah.
right. They did kind of. It was a good idea. Like it was like that's the direction you needed to go. You just didn't quite do it right. And
Yeah.
instead of tweaking it and fixing it, they abandoned the idea.
Yep.
Mhm.
And, post COVID, that's kind of really a terrible thing to have done, mostly because, like, people were so isolated during COVID, and now there's, like, all
That
these people who
was that
want
was
to go out.
pre-COVID, I think. I
It
want to say
was.
that.
No, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
okay, okay. I want to say that was like 2017 or 2018 they
Yeah,
tried
it
that.
was pre-COVID. That's what I'm saying. Like, and so post-COVID, when there was all this lockdown, and then if
Yes.
imagine how people would have felt like after lockdowns finally lifted, they could go back to their GameStop and just hang out again after being
Hmm.
locked in. Like that would have been such a surge in business for them, and I think it
Absolutely.
really would have been a good idea. I don't know what I never had a market that had that set up, so I don't know what they did so wrong there that why they
They were.
abandoned it in the
I want
end.
to
But
say they were all out west. There were nothing out our way that
yeah,
did that.
yeah, so that was a shame, and I really loved that aspect of going there. And I remember the first time that I didn't make it to that GameStop was Skyrim, the day after Skyrim launched, because I was so exhausted from staying up all night playing Skyrim. I just passed out and didn't go to GameStop that day. And I said to myself, well, that was an exception. That's the Skyrim exception rule is what I called it. Like, and there were occasional times when I couldn't make it, but really, like the vast majority of the time, I just go stop in, say, "Hey guys, just saying hi," and then I'd leave. And
Yeah.
then eventually, that store. So like I said, 3 years I was in school there. I graduated in 2014, and at some point between when I graduated and when the Elder Scrolls Online console release launched in 2015, that store shut down. And I knew this because they had contacted me telling me that they had to move my pre-order
Mm,
from one store to
mm,
another.
right.
And that was a shame, and I was really sad to hear that there. Um,
Yeah, the store that's actually pretty close to my house now, they shut down actually at the beginning of this year.
yeah,
They were a slow store and they were a pretty big store. They were what they call
yeah,
strip stores, which is one that's not in a
yeah.
mall. Um, they were actually a pretty big store. And actually, that is unfortunately the biggest irony when it comes to that company too. Is I always noticed the busiest stores are always the smallest ones too.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just moving them to a bigger location that was nearby, right? You don't want to move locations, but you need
Yeah.
to move. They wouldn't do it. They would stick with these teeny tiny ones where
Mm-hmm.
around Christmas time, right? You're shoulder to shoulder with people. But then they do have ones that are huge. One of the ones that I worked at was, I'm not joking, man. I don't know why GameStop ever bought this storefront, because if you take what you think of as an average GameStop location,
Yeah.
this is not hyperbole. It was probably four of those. It was enormous.
Yeah,
We
what's an
had
average GameStop? It's like 800 square feet or something like that. Like,
well, the problem is when they do them, they also count the back room, and you're obviously not going
oh,
to look at that. But
okay, yeah.
I would, if I had to, it's been a while. If I had to remember, I would say this store was in terms of surface area for customers to walk around, probably 80 feet wide, which is already four times what you're usually getting. Like you're usually getting maybe 20 feet wide, right?
Yeah,
By probably,
because they're always more
they're always
narrow than they
very
are
narrow.
long. Yeah,
Probably 200 feet deep. Like it was a huge store. Like I mean,
yeah.
genuinely a clothing store size. Like a strip, like something like a Lane Bryant or something like
I
that.
actually I went into a store like that when I was on my hunt for shadows. There was one store that was enormous in Florida
And I'll
that I
bet
went
you there was
into.
nobody in it. Nobody, no customers in it, right?
I think there were like two customers. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it
just it. That's the irony of it all. When they finally have a big store, they're always in the slowest places. So they're probably
yeah,
paying
this
by
was not
far the
a
most for rent.
particularly nice area.
Yeah. Well, the one I was at was a pretty nice area. It was not busy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I worked there. I was like, God, I went from being at a busy store to being at this one, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, this is
Let me
actually
this one
really
was
slow.
Rick, this one was so big. And I don't just mean like big and big. I mean tall. It was a
Mhm.
tall store because the Assassin's Creed box, not the one that I ended up buying because this one all because they had two. They had two PS5 Shadows copies in this store and they both were torn on the slipcover. Not big tears, but I wasn't going to buy it after. So, but they were so high up that they had like a multi, like it wasn't like a step ladder, step up on a ladder and you get down. It was like a climbing up ladder to get it down from the shelf. That's how tall this store was.
Well, that's not super uncommon. Just depending how they're set up. Like they would actually have this. Even the highest shelf would not be real high, but a lot of them, the slat wall, they would have something at the very, very top, which you would need an actual ladder to get down because you couldn't get it down any other way.
Yeah, but this was the whole store had like it was that tall all
Mm,
around. Like they had stuff up high all over the place. So it was a massive store with almost
mm,
nobody in there
yeah,
because the guy was
it
just
always
sitting
is
at the
that way.
yeah, the guy was just sitting at the desk and I was like, "Yeah, I called about this." And he's like, "Yeah, it's over there." And so we walked over and I was like, they're ripped. I can see they're ripped from here." He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. I didn't see that when you called." And I was like, "Well, I drove 40 minutes in, Orlando
Considering you
traffic."
specifically asked if they were ripped, he should have got off his ass and kind of looked at it. Yes.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so
but
I ended
anyway.
up, and so and when I ended up actually going to the other store that I went to, it was that traditional small store.
Mm.
It was that 20 by,
More of like a GNC size, bigger than GNC
yeah,
because those were smaller, but kind of more like that as
yeah,
opposed to like a Lane Bryant is the one I'm talking about. Like it was like that size of a store. Maybe
yeah.
not. I mean, Lane Bryant's pretty big, but something like that, right? More like a clothing store. And it's like, man, why did you ever have a store? Don't get me wrong, it was wonderful to work there because you had all the room to work with. Whereas when I was at a small store, I don't know how they do it now, but at the time you had every month your marketing would change, like all the stuff they have on end caps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You would have to get to the point you didn't have room for all of them. Like you would have to decide what you weren't going to put up and stuff. And obviously, GameStop didn't want that because GameStop made a lot of money by the
Of course.
different publishers paying for that thing. And it's just like, what do you want us to do? There's not enough room to put all these end caps in there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have anything more to say on kind of this side of it? I'm kind of.
No, I was just gonna. I wanted to finish the little bit that I was talking about.
Sure.
My thought about working there. So I'd always wanted to work at this store, and I never ended up doing it. Even I figured I had like an easy way in because I was so friendly with all the managers and whatnot. But I never. I don't know if I never applied or they never had any openings because it was like that was the gig, like that was the job that people wanted, and the people that worked there.
Especially on a college campus.
Yeah. And obviously, like the manager was not a student there, but all the other people were students.
Right. Right.
Aston and Jordan were students at the school, uh, and so I never ended up getting to work there. But I did get a job working at a restaurant, and I worked at this restaurant. It's called 2J's Gourmet Deli at the time. It's just 2J's now, but it was 2J's Gourmet Deli. It is a Florida chain. It still exists. It was a lot bigger at one point in time. and then it had some troubles and it shrunk down a little bit and they rebranded and it was a good restaurant. I really liked working there. I liked that job. It was a very New York style deli, and being from New York, it made me feel kind of at home. And my dad loved it too. But my job there was as a host. So not the server who went around, taking orders or anything like that, but just the one seating people, right? So I was at the host stand one day, and this group of guys comes in, and I don't know how I got to chatting with them, but one of the gentlemen, his name was Excel. He was the district manager of GameStop. He was the GameStop district manager. I just
Well,
happened.
of that district, not of
Right.
GameStop as a whole,
Right.
right?
Well, yeah, of the local
Right.
GameStop region. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So somehow that came up, and I still to this day have his number stored in my phone because he gave me his number and said, "Hey, give me a call if you ever want to work at GameStop." But this was right as I was getting ready to graduate and move to go to law school, so I couldn't justify leaving because I only worked at the restaurant for that last year of college to build up some money and some experience. So I unfortunately uh, have not been able to ever work at GameStop, but I have his phone number, and I always thought that was so funny that it's still just saved in my phone after all these years
Yeah, that's. I mean,
doing it. So
that's not an overly unsimilar way to how I got. I mean, Mark is how I got in. I mean, he knew me, and
right,
I guess basically the time came, and he just said, "Hey, we're going to be hiring holiday help. Do you want to come on?" I said, "Yeah."
were you hired as a temp then, like a seasonal?
I actually don't think so. But well, so most places most GameStops that is how you would have started at that time. Like they,
Hmm.
unless for some reason they were really shorthanded during the regular year and were trying to hire, they usually would start you as temp, and then after the holiday season they would go, okay, this person sucks. We're gonna let them go.
Yeah,
This person was okay. We'll consider them, but this person's really good. We're gonna bring them on as a. At the time that the title was called GA, which was Game Advisor, right?
game advisor. Yep, I
Yeah,
remember
yep.
seeing that on the name
Um,
tags.
so, but Mark. So what was actually unique about this store is remember what I said about small stores?
Hmm.
The smallest store you've ever seen was way bigger than this store. This store was tiny,
Wow.
but we did well because had personality, right? Like I always say, the amazing part, like we had to use the bathroom in the back room as storage because there was no room for anything.
Wow.
My room here is bigger than what our back room was. Like that, I'm not joking. That's 100% true.
That's
Um,
crazy.
I mean, not kind of the bathroom. The bathroom was a little bit bigger than that, but anyway. But Mark actually functioned as I will only hire people that I know and trust. I'm not gonna you work off of an application that I don't know the person,
Right,
and
that's smart.
it was not everybody can do that. I do understand that, but Mark, being as that he obviously had good rapport with his customers and stuff like that, was able to do it that way, and so he hired me that way. I believe Lynn had already worked there, or at least Lynn worked there for so damn long it didn't matter. But everybody else that I knew that got hired, that's how they got hired, is because we were regulars that showed up, and Mark said, "Hey, you guys know games. Can you sell something? Because if you do, do you want a job?"
Yeah,
And that's pretty much how I got there.
yeah.
And then when he moved to the store that I believe he's still in now, then a positive and a negative happened. The negative was a guy named Doug took over the store. Doug was a complete asshole, and I
Hmm.
hated him. However, it was the first time I was going to get promoted because when he left, Lynn went with him, so positions kind of opened up that way.
Right, right.
But and then things went happen there. But either way, even though GameStop sucked, working for Mark was good because everybody was friends. So we were all cool and would just bullshit about games all day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, when that changed, then you started going to other stores, and you had your buddies that you talked to about games, but it became much more business,
Hmm.
and much less fun for sure.
Yeah.
But
I just had a realization. It is 2025. It is 20 years since you worked at GameStop.
20 years since I started at GameStop,
Right,
but it's
since you
15.
started at GameStop.
It's
Yeah, 20
15 years
years.
since I worked at GameStop.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, 20 years since you started. Yeah. Yeah. I just had that realization. That's
yeah,
exactly 20 years. Yeah.
yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't remember what month it was when I was that, so I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you that part. But
Yeah.
yeah, I did not work there when the 360 launched, but it's actually it might have been very early 2006 is when I started.
Yeah, like
Um,
December 20,
I
2005. Yeah.
I want to say I
If
was
you got
there.
hired over holidays, you would have been like December 2005 would have been it, if that would make sense, right?
Well,
Because if it,
I was about to say I'm almost positive I was there before Oblivion came out, and Oblivion was like March of 2006.
yeah,
So
and they hired you for holiday sales, but it was after the 360, that would
yeah,
just be like December. That'd be December '05.
yeah.
So we've talked a lot about working at GameStop and our experience and some of the negatives of GameStop and going there, but let's talk some of the positives and some good thoughts and memories of GameStop because we touched on my memories of like hanging out in the store, but I remember all of these like midnight launches on campus, walking over there, and I always enjoyed that. Like that was always a big thing for me was I because I love physical games. I still do. I love collector's editions. I have so many collector's edition guidebooks that I never even opened because I just got them because they were, buy it with the game and you get it for 20% off or 25% off. And I just, yep, all right, I'll take it, whatever. It's cheaper. So do you have any good memories of going to GameStop for midnight launches? Because I've got a couple that I'll
Uh,
share.
I have a few, and actually, well, I'll start on the midnight launch part of it. And I will take this from even the employee side. I'll give you two good examples.
Yeah.
One not employee, one employee.
Okay.
So I loved midnight sales. I always, I actually, I even liked working them. I told my managers, I was like, I want to work every midnight sale we have. So long as I'm not on vacation or whatever, I want to work
Right.
every single midnight sale. And for the most part, I mean, unless they simply couldn't because they had to have covers the next day, they would do it. Um, I love working them. I was like, this is what it's about, right? You don't
Right.
have
It's the
there's
energy.
what you have people that are passionate about it showing up. You don't have the losers that are just getting off of a bus and buying the cheapest game they can find. Like those aren't the people you want to deal with. These are the people you want to deal with because they're the ones who are excited about something. And I'm trying to remember, probably the most fun one that I ever worked was probably maybe Halo Reach. I can't remember if I worked that one or not.
Hmm.
But either way, I mean, obviously it wasn't all that great when it was kind of a smaller midnight launch. It was usually more fun when it was a big one. Call of Duties were always a pain in the ass because you had a ton of people and
Hmm.
they were just frat boy losers.
Yeah.
Not saying everybody that plays Call of Duty is frat boy loser, but obviously you had a large contingency of that.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but as a customer though, I will say one of the most fun one I ever did was actually, even though I bought the game, but I didn't care that much about it. When I went for Halo 2's midnight launch, and this was
Mm.
before I worked there, it was the same store. It was Mark and Lynn, um, and this was in a mall again. I remember, but this is when they could get malls to let them do midnight launches, right? That became kind of a
Mm.
problem later.
Yep, yep, I
I
did.
remember going up there and I was like, man, there's a lot of people here. And, like, even though I didn't care that much for the game at the time, I've become a much bigger Halo fan over the years than what I was at that point. It was more being a contrarian than anything else, I think.
Eh.
But
You, the
um,
contrarian? I don't believe it,
I,
Rich.
I don't consider myself a contrarian. I just consider myself to have very strong opinions. Um, but I like some of the biggest games on. I love Grand Theft Auto, right?
True.
Like you have to be a contrarian to not like Grand Theft Auto, but
That's true.
or to down talk it. But anyway, I remember sitting in line with, and obviously it sucks when you go by yourself, but when you go with friends and you have like shit to do, and especially when a store does a good job and has like trivia for you and shit like that was always awesome. And
Prizes, the prizes.
I'd never really dealt too much where they had prizes. Usually, if they had prizes, it was because it was offered by GameStop, and God knows GameStop wasn't going to
Oh,
deliver
I've
very
got a
often.
story for you.
All right, let's hear it.
No, no, when you're finished, finish yours
Well,
first.
I'm more or less done. I was just gonna say, like, but midnight launches were so much fun. One exception was when I had to work one. When I worked Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2s, and it was
Hmm.
not actually because of the game. It was
Right.
because so I had to open the store that day, but I told him I was like, I still want to work the minute. So he said, okay, how about I give you a half day to open just until I can get in at
Hmm.
noon or whatever time it was, and then you can leave, and then come back from this. So I said, yeah, that works. Unfortunately, as that day went on, I got progressively more and more sick. I actually ended up getting the flu, but I was like, I didn't know it was the flu at the time. I was just like, man, I feel
Yeah.
terrible. And I went, and I was a zombie by the end of that midnight. So I had nothing to do with the game, I had nothing to do with the customers, I had nothing to do with GameStop.
Yeah. You were
I
just
got,
sick.
I was so sick by the end of that. And so obviously, because of what game it was, people acting like idiots outside,
Yeah.
I had very little patience for that. And I was probably a dickhead that day because I was so miserable because of how I felt.
Hmm. Yeah. So my experience with midnight launches, I have two stories that I'll tell quickly here. So the first one that I have like this really good memory of, because I went to a bunch of them where I like pick things up or whatever, but was actually Skyrim's midnight launch, which I talked about a little bit earlier when I said that that was like the first day I didn't go to the GameStop since I started college, like earlier that year, because I just like slept through the whole day because I played the game. I was I don't remember where I was in. I must have been either like really early in the line or I was like the first collector's edition of Skyrim to like pick it up at that time because I remember coming out of the store with the Skyrim box, which you can kind of see here.
Mm. Yeah, you can see it. Kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. So this is my college dorm room. There it is. This is the college dorm room where I was. I came out of the GameStop with the box and I raised it up and like cheered and like the crowd cheered with me because I had the collector's edition of Skyrim.
Mm.
It was so cool. I love that. That was so fun.
Mm.
And then the second story I'll share is when I was at GameStop for GameStop's Mass Effect 3 release. And you were right, they did do fun things like trivia and
Mm.
whatnot, and there was like, name 10 BioWare games or something like that, and like little things. But one thing that they did at the end was they did a raffle. They did a raffle for a Mass Effect 3 Shepherd standee. Like Shepherd stand like a demonstration Shepherd standee. They put
Like the I gotcha. The cardboard stand-up
the
thing. Yeah.
cardboard standee, yeah. They did a raffle for it. And the funny thing about this is I was waiting for this midnight launch and my parents were actually waiting to pick me up because it came out right around spring break and they were picking me up to bring me home or something. Like we were going somewhere. Something was happening that they were there with me and they were like driving me to their house. And I had a car at the time, so I guess I was leaving it there, but they picked me up and I'm standing in line and this whole thing's happening and they're waiting for me very patiently, wonderful parents, of course. And they do the raffle and they call my number and I have a standee of Shepherd and I won this standee. This is the picture of it in the store. And to this day, that standee is in my parents' house. When they moved to Virginia from Florida, they took it with them for me and I still have that standee. And somehow the base, if you look in that picture, you can see that there was like a base that it was in. They lost the base in the move somehow, so you don't have the base anymore. But the standee is still there; it's still standing. And I walked over to my parents' house with my Mass Effect 3, not their house, to the car with the Mass Effect 3 and the standee under my arm. And my mom just looked at me like, "What is that?" And my dad was there too, and he's like, "What is that?" And they like helped me shove it into the trunk to bring it home. And it just it's been sitting in my parents' home for 13 years, basically.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us would take home the occasional thing if we liked it. You can actually see a few from here. Like, first of all, one right there, the Crisis Core thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You see coming soon. I just never
Yeah.
cut that off. These are a little hard to make out what they are in the thing, but that right there, and that right there,
Uh-huh.
that is Ratchet and Clank going commando. That is Jack 2.
Oh.
They were like the kind that go in like the middle of a thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You can't see it here, but actually probably the nicest thing that I have that I took from them, and I mean I was allowed to. It's right over here. And actually, when people see it, they're like, "That is so cool." It was a Resistance Fall of Man, as in the PS3 Resistance game.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of one of those like, not a poster because it's actually like it's plastic, and the Chimera skull is actually like 3D and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've had it over there ever since. I have a couple things over on this side that you can't see. A Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep.
Ooh,
One
nice.
there I was able to take off the coming soon. That's what actually just like a poster.
Yeah.
Above that I have an Avatar: The Last Airbender one, and above that is another one of my favorite ones. Is it's the thing that would go on the top of an end cap of a standee
Mm-hmm.
for the original Dissidia Final Fantasy for PSP.
Wow.
So I was able to again cut off the top saying like pre-order now, so it actually looks like an awesome Final Fantasy like 1 through 12 poster.
Yeah.
And then above there
Nice.
this is the last one I'll tell you about, but above there I have I don't know where this is from, but it's Assassin's Creed 2. I want to say it also was a shelf topper. It's Ezio
Ooh.
with both of his arms spread completely like open,
Mm-hmm.
like with the hidden blade and the poison blade retracted. I've had that taped above my computer for 15 years now.
Retracted or extended? They're out or they're in?
Oh, I'm sorry, extended.
I was gonna say retracted means he's just standing like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's like it's like almost like a bust. Like it cuts off here.
Yeah, I think
it's
I
like
remember seeing what you're talking about.
it's like
Yeah.
that. It's like that wide.
Hmm.
So like it's awesome when you put it like up against the ceiling. Um, oh,
It looks like he's coming to assassinate you.
kinda, yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, all kinds of cool shit like that. And I mean, I wasn't the only
Yeah.
one. Like most people were like, I even did take the occasional standee. I had a Star Wars Episode 3 one, which was, I mean, it was basically the cover of Star Wars Episode 3. But I had that in my when I lived at home in my dad's basement forever. I eventually just kind of threw it away because I had no room for it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
had another one. I don't remember what it was, but
see, I never had access to those things because I never worked there. So to me, winning that thing, like I felt like I used up my life's worth of luck winning that standee. Like because there were a lot. It's Mass Effect. There were a ton of people
yeah.
in line for that midnight launch, and I was there for Grand Theft Auto 5's midnight launch, and I think that the PS4 was at a different store. I think it was at a different store than that one for some
The
reason.
console itself, you mean?
Yeah, the PS4 itself was
Yeah.
at a different store launch. I don't think I went there. I don't remember why. And I'm trying to think. Maybe the store had actually closed earlier than I thought. I thought it was after I left. Maybe it closed like the year before. So whatever it was, I know the PS4 launch was at a different store because I was not in. I was not on the campus. I moved off the campus that year. Um, and even when I did not live on campus, I still went to that store like every day because I was around. So I would stop in, say hi, and then I'd leave. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I have a lot of good memories with GameStop.
I have something else I wanted to mention. This is not
Go
about a
for
midnight
it.
sale, but
No, no,
this is
go.
so I've mentioned Lynn quite a few times now, right? Um,
Is
so
that your
at the
wife
time,
now?
no, no, um, at the time that this would have been original Xbox time period, right?
Yeah,
PS2 original Xbox. Um, I really did not have any online friends like that had consoles with that, and
yeah.
Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow was about to come out, and I'd been watching. I'm like, my god, that multiplayer looks so cool. Because I don't know if you know this or not. It was one of the most unique. Honestly, nobody has tried to
No,
replicate it, which makes no sense to me because it was pretty much the original. What do they call it? Where you have two different sides.
asymmetrical multiplayer.
Asymmetrical. Yes, thank you. Asymmetrical is not quite accurate, but it's probably the closest because the way that it worked was it was 2v2, okay? You
Okay, but it's
had
not asymmetrical. That's very symmetrical.
but here's why I'm saying that because the two sides played completely different, and that's what was
Hmm.
unique about it. Um, your one side you were playing as the soldiers, let's say, right? You were defending things. This was played like a first-person shooter, and you had a flashlight and all kinds of stuff, right? The other side, the two of you were spies. You did not have, you had like a stun gun or whatever, but you didn't have like lethal weaponry. But you could do all the climbing on the pipes and sneaking around in
Hmm.
shadows and all that. It was
Oh,
it was brilliant. Honestly, to this day, it still might be one of the best multiplayer modes ever made.
that sounds kind of like what Rainbow Six Siege ends up being, except both sides have like the violence, like the legal stuff. But
No, yeah, Rainbow Six Siege is much closer to like a more grounded Counter Strike.
sure.
This is something very much. I guess you could say the Merc side played more like Rainbow Six Siege almost, but the
Hmm.
idea was you had one side who stealth and sneaking through the shadows was their thing, right?
Assassin's Creed Siege.
Yeah. Um, whereas it was truly brilliant. That said, it's not really. I don't even know if it had a like matchmaking system, but that's not one you really want to play with randoms. You kind of wanted to play it with friends, right?
Yeah.
So I made actual literal friends because of it. And like I had been going into GameStop and talk this before I worked there, right? Talking to Lynn and saying, and he had mentioned like, oh, you like Splinter Cell, don't you? I said, yeah. He's like, have you seen how the multiplayer in this works? I'm like, yeah, this sounds really neat. I hope it works out, blah blah blah. And when Pandora Tomorrow finally came out, all my hours of hanging out there and talking paid off because I was like, man, who am I gonna play this with? And he just goes, hey, you're picking up Pandora tomorrow. And I said, yeah. He's like, you gonna be on tonight? And I was like, yeah. He's like, we'll send you an invite. I'm like, and I basically had a small group of online friends to play games with
There you
because of
go.
that game, because of talking about it. And I actually, I mean, I don't talk to Lynn a whole lot anymore. Usually, I see him on Steam, but usually it's his kids playing. But I have a friend who I still talk to all the time. I
Yeah.
did not even know her. She came along with the group, and we became friends from that. And I still talk to her to this day. And like, I actually made friends because of GameStop. So
Yeah.
as much as I hate GameStop, I won't by any means say there was not a
Yeah.
positive side.
Yeah. I definitely thought Lynn was a girl because you were saying Lynn. I don't think
Oh
you
no
ever
no
said
no no
he.
no
And then
no
you said
yeah
he
yeah
for the first
no
time
no
this
no
time,
no
so it's
it's a
Lin
guy.
and not
No,
Lyn. Okay,
it's a dude.
gotcha.
Yeah Lynn, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's really cool to have those friend stories. I still am like Facebook friends with some of the people from the GameStop days like that, but I don't really talk to them as much. I'm not big into talking to most people from college. I have a few people from that era. Most of my online friends I've either made through like Twitch communities or podcast communities, like with Season Gaming, how I know Alex and nearly how I'm on this podcast at all. I have friends. I would say my online friends don't come from GameStop. They either come from those communities or from my World of Warcraft days when I played World of Warcraft, because I still have all those friends on Steam. Two of them right now. One of them's playing Dead by Daylight. The other one's playing Stellaris on Steam, and one other is playing Dune Awakening. So I got these friends that I've known just for years and years, but I never made them at GameStop. Just I've never been that big of a multiplayer guy, so for me it just would never have worked out that way. I had World of Warcraft, that was my multiplayer thing, and then the rest of it was really just single player stuff. But I just like talking those single player games, and that's really what I got out of the GameStop experience. And I'm grateful for GameStop and its impact on my life in that way, because I always enjoyed going there and buying things from there. And I do want to give one major negative of GameStop, and that is that I had something like 100,000 of their power up rewards points or something like that. And then somehow I guess my account got hacked and I have negative 150,000 points right now.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that before.
And nobody's ever been able to figure it out or solve it or resolve it, no matter how many times I've called them or talked about it in store. So I used to only buy things through GameStop because I'm a points hoarder. I like to hoard points and do things. And they used to have really good rewards if you really wanted to. And now they just like give you money. But there's one point where you get like universal passes, or like you get a lot of stuff on their reward store. Now it's just like points for cash. But I can't ever get any points for cash because my account is just destroyed with negative points. I'll never recover 150,000 points or whatever it's in the red.
You think at the
So
very least they could reset it back to zero? Maybe tell you can't get the points back you lost, but you could at least reset it to zero. That
yeah,
is
I don't
so
even
weird.
I don't. Yeah, it is strange. No one's ever been able to figure it out. I think that whoever hacked me like bought Uber gift cards or something from it, because I
Probably.
showed in my history at one point like Uber redemptions or something like that.
Although at the very least, what you should do is just open a separate account instead of using the one you have.
I so rarely buy things from GameStop anymore, other than like special collector's editions, like the Lumiere edition for Expedition 33 or the Shadows edition, like that. Like at this point, I just get stuff wherever I want, wherever it's cheapest, and my default is to Amazon, unfortunately, even though Amazon doesn't really ship things that well either.
See,
um,
I actually have more shipping issues with GameStop than I do with Amazon.
oh, I just mean that Amazon tends to send things in like no protection. It just sends it in a little envelope.
Yeah, although for me that's not so much of an issue now because about a year ago they opened a distribution center that's like 15
Oh, that's
minutes from
good.
me. So that does help to be sure.
Yeah, I had so when I just this past 20 not this last year, year before 2023, when Grand Blue Fantasy Relink came out, I was like, I played the demo. This is cool. I think I'll get the collector's edition, not the collect, like the deluxe, the $100 edition. Yeah, and so I got it, and it came dented. The box was just like dented from Amazon. I was just like, I don't care that much about this one because I don't care. Like it's whatever. I just got this because I wanted it, and then they ended up giving me a partial refund for it, and I was like, that's fine. A partial refund. I still have the box. I still got the edition I wanted. It's a little banged up, but they didn't charge me the full price for it, so it worked out. So that's an Amazon complaint. That's not a GameStop issue, but
Right, right.
yeah, I have good memories with GameStop. I always liked GameStop. I was sad to see what happened to it and its decline happen because I did have good experiences there,
Sure.
but it really is a destruction of its own making. And the only reason it might still exist is because of all of the GameStop stonks and all that stuff from the
Hmm.
COVID age and all the stock manipulation and shorting it and all of that. Like that may be the only reason they're still able to function is because they sold a lot of their stock when it was that high and they took action, like they got cash from that scheme that was going on there. uh yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, let me ask one more question, Rick. Do you think
Sure.
that GameStop has had a good or a bad impact on the games industry, not necessarily just the retail but on the games industry as a whole?
I think objectively they have had a bad impact on it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's even a question. I mean, obviously there was all the discussion about used games back in the day, which there's no question. I mean that certainly pushed a lot of them to push to digital, which was probably going to happen anyway. But the reality is, if you look back far enough, GameStop and EB, because it was EB separate at that time,
Hmm.
you know, back when they sold physical PC games, I don't remember if GameStop did or what Babbage's at the time, I guess. EB did do used PC games. Um, because I mean, they had an activation code, but the activation code was printed on the inside of your case,
Hmm.
right? Right, it wasn't like an online,
Yeah.
activation. Um, and for over time, that plus obviously the mounting piracy of issue of PC gaming at the time,
Yeah.
really did push them all to start digital, and then Steam completely took that over and basically made it the de
Yeah.
facto standard.
Yep.
Um, and there was no question that once the infrastructures for internet was in place, I mean Sony and Microsoft were licking their chops to be able to control their own market. Um, but
Yeah.
GameStop most certainly sped that up by pissing everybody off.
Yeah, I think that's really the worst part of it, Rick, because I think that GameStop's early contributions to the industry are largely positive because having a centralized place for people to go and get games, and even if it was, crappy trade-in values, at least you could trade in games, and it really aided kids and younger people towards getting games, even if they were getting ripped off at the time, they were able to get invested in the industry, in the hobby. So I think there is some benefit to it, but as time has gone on and as GameStop has made bad decision after bad decision, I think that that's where you say that they're actually harming things because they're getting people upset forces them to say, I'd rather buy it digitally than deal with a
Mhm.
GameStop. I'd rather not own a physical copy of something because I don't want to deal with those people. The customer service of Sony and Microsoft and Steam is far better than the GameStop customer service. If you have a problem, they're going to be more
And
helpful.
and considering how bad the Xbox and PlayStation service is, that
Yeah,
tells you everything you need to know.
it
It's
it
very good.
does.
It's very good on Steam, so I'm not counting them.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But Xbox and PlayStation's is as bad as it gets, and somehow
Yeah.
it's still better than
Yeah.
GameStop's.
I will say one funny story before we conclude. We talked a little bit earlier about the Impulse and the GameStop digital store that they did and all that stuff, remember?
Hmm.
So I don't know if it was like maybe a year or two ago. It was pretty recent. I was going back through my emails and looking, and I saw some old copies of different games that I had purchased because I bought like maybe 3 games from the GameStop's digital thing. And I don't remember what made me do this, but I was trying to figure out if I could still like access these games, if there was any way for me to download them. And there's not any way to download them because that service is long gone.
Oh yeah.
A lesson, digital purchasers, a lesson there for you. But one of the games, and I don't remember which one it was, it actually might have been like Dragon Age 2 or something. It was something I bought on PC, and I was able to take that ancient code and redeem it on the publisher's
Yeah.
store and
What
add
what
it to my
I
library.
I
I
knew
think it was
that
Dragon Age 2 on EA.
I knew that happened, but I'm actually surprised that code still worked all these years later.
It did because I had used it on GameStop's thing and like I'd had the game. I'm pretty sure it was Dragon Age 2 and I'd used it on GameStop's thing and then I took that code and I went into the EA app and I added it to my library and it worked and it was added into my library. I think that's what it was. It may have been a different one, but that's what I'm recalling right now is that was the code that worked and it was added to my library and I thought that was just the craziest thing.
Do you remember the debacle with, I think it was Deus Ex Mankind Divided, but I could be wrong about that. Do you remember that by chance?
Which
Just a small
debacle? I
second.
remember their microtransaction debacle with that one.
No, 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 no. This was a GameStop debacle
Oh,
exclusively.
wait. Was this the one where they were like
They
trying to
were
encourage pre-orders to get more content in the
no,
game?
no, no, no.
Because that was
This
another thing they did too.
this was, and again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this wasn't Deus Ex, but I'm pretty sure it was. Deus Ex, assuming that's what it was, came with a code for digital redemption from, even though you bought a disc of it, right? This was still when you buy CDs,
Hmm.
DVDs, whatever it was. It came with a digital redemption code on, it might have been GOG, but I can't remember. Um, GameStop had instructed their
Oh, they took them out. They took the
they took
codes
the
out.
codes out.
I
That's
do
right.
remember that. Yes,
People, somehow somebody found out they were doing it and posted it, and it blew up.
I
So
do remember that.
the
Yep.
reason I said this is because I remember Impulse, like that's why they were doing it. They were trying to discourage using whatever this other platform was that it was the
Hmm.
code for, and they wanted to encourage using Impulse. And so people that had pre-ordered and bought their copy by the time this happened were encouraged to go back to the store to get a full refund for the game. You can keep the game, but get the full refund. Get, I want to say like a $50 GameStop gift card. They gave you credit on Impulse. And unfortunately, I was like, damn it, you pissed me off, so I didn't buy it. I wish I had, because you basically got it for free because of that.
Yeah.
But you said Impulse just made me think of that, because I will
Yeah.
forever attribute Impulse to that event.
Yeah, Impulse was sketchy. Impulse was a sketchy system, but I at that point in time I was just very loyal to GameStop. I liked using their stuff, and I still hold some affection for them, even if that loyalty is not there anymore because of how they've treated us
There's
and
a little bit
behaved.
there. It's just a lot more deep for me because of having been employee.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
there's a whole lot, but there's no question that there was some good memories over the years.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that about covers everything we wanted to say about GameStop. This was a good half episode conversation here. We're about the same length as a normal episode sometimes. We're run I think like about 70 minutes here. So we'll close this up. I have received marching orders that we are to read the games for this week from the boss himself. So let's go through the game releases coming up this next week for the week of June 22nd through June 28th. Rick, do you want to take it over for this one? Because I was hosting.
I don't even know where the list is, so I don't think.
Oh, okay. It's in the doc. I'll do it. It's fine.
Oh,
It's in
okay.
our...
I didn't know where you put it.
Yeah, I just put it in the doc like normal. All right, June 22nd through June 28th. We have Outrider Mako coming to PC on June 23rd. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate comes to Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One on June 24th. I Am Your Beast comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S on June 25th. Marvel Mystic Mayhem comes to iOS and Android on June 25th. Once Upon a Puppet comes to Switch on June 25th. Black Desert comes to PS5 and Xbox Series X and S on June 26th. Death Stranding 2 On the Beach comes to PlayStation 5 on June 26th. Persona 5 The Phantom X comes to PC, iOS, and Android on June 26th. Ruffy and the Riverside comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch, and PC on June 26th. System Shock 2 25th Anniversary Remaster comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on, you guessed it, June 26th. Bendy and the Ink Machine comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S on June 27th. Tamagotchi Plaza comes to Switch 2 and Switch on June 27th. And finally, Until Then comes to Switch on June 27th.
There's only two games in that entire list that matter. Death Stranding 2 obviously being one, and the other being System Shock 2.
Oh, okay. I had no idea what your second one was
going
going to be. It's a remaster, 25th anniversary remaster.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what they called it.
I had no idea what your second one was going to be. I was like, is he going to say Persona 5? Is that his thing?
No.
I was like...
there's nobody on Earth that's more anti-mobile game than me.
Yeah, well, that's PC, iOS, and Android.
Yeah,
Don't forget,
it's still a mobile game. Make no mistake about it. It's a mobile game they're releasing on PC.
It's Game of Thrones, Road, whatever the Road Game of Thrones thing, that one that just came out.
But
Road of something, yeah.
System Shock 2
cool.
is, for a reason, widely regarded as one of the very, very best games ever made.
Yeah, I never played it, but I am definitely aware of its status in that regard, for sure.
Everything that is good about BioShock, excluding Rapture, came from System Shock 2.
We can debate whether Rapture was a good thing or a bad thing
No, we cannot, because there's only one right answer to that.
I love Colombia. Colombia is a beautiful city. I like the sky setting and the brightness. Dark settings don't really. That's why I'm not like a super dark fantasy fan. I like the brightness. I like light in things. I don't know. I like colors, and maybe that's just me. But what can I say? I would love to see Rapture. I would love a whole game set in Rapture before Rapture fell, more than just like the BioShock Infinite prequel DLC stuff.
I mean, technically, that's what the multiplayer was of BioShock 2. That was during.
Don't even remember.
Rapture.
I don't even remember.
But most people don't. But that is what it was. It was the Civil War that
That's
happened.
Funny. Well, that will do it for this week's half episode. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for season 5, episode 23.5. Now, we will be back next week with a full episode where we go through the news, and Alex will be back at that point. He'll be back from his exile to America. And then after that will be our episode 200, where the plan, the goal is to have everybody on for the 200th episode and take it from there, because that's why we had the half episode, was just to make sure that we could have
To
200.
delay 1 week, yeah.
Yeah, we just need to delay a week. Honestly, it's but that's it. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this still pretty normal length episode, but with a single focus topic. And I know that Rick, you're excited for Death Stranding too.
I am. I
I
just finished the first one earlier this week so that I can be
Yeah,
ready.
I know the whole crew is excited for that one, except for me. I don't really care. I may play Death Stranding at some point. There's just so many other games to play, so I don't have anything against Death Stranding. I want to make that clear. I want to make it very clear. I am not anti Death Stranding or Death Stranding 2. I just am not pro it. I don't have experience with it to have a stance on it. But that's okay. So, Rick, where can the people find you?
Bush4969 on all the socials, and youtube.com/spreading the nerd most Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Clint, who is finally playing Hollow Knight. The meme is finally ending.
Cool.
That's all.
And you can find me at Joseph_Law_Rusa on Twitter/X. You can find my writing at Season Gaming as Don Lionheart. Please check out my Mind's Eye review, which I discussed on here last week in a little bit more detail of what I was going to be writing and what I thought about the game. So we didn't, obviously as a half episode, we didn't talk about it. I haven't played it anymore since then. I did end up giving it a 6 in the end after some deliberation and some conversations with the SG staff there. I said I was between a 6 and a 6.5 in there. And so please check out my thoughts. I think it's cohesive. I don't know if you've checked it out or not, Rick, but feel free to read it and see what I thought about the game.
I have not, because I think your opinion on it is borderline insanity, but to each his own.
That's okay. That's what I'm known for, the borderline insanity opinion.
Actually, I said borderline. That's untrue. I think it is pure insanity, but
I walk the line.
You're allowed. You're allowed.
Well, thank you everyone once again for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will see you next week for our full episode. And remember, press X
to play.
Take care, everyone.